Man, social media. Everything in our grasp is a tool for the advancement of the glory of God. How best to use social media as that tool? That's a great thought and a great question that I think we should be asking ourselves. I am definitely one who may face some harsh judgment when I stand before the Lord on how I best used it all. What I tend to do personally is I tend to, despite my depravity, I tend to stay consistent with who I am. If I'm humorous, if I bring joy to people by laughter, then I'll do that via social media because it's a microcosm of who I am, a snapshot. If I'm very analytical and thinking through things and trying to understand all that, questions that we need to ponder, then I want to ask those questions broadly. In that there's feedback, right? So people are going to respond back and have answers and questions, and it's going to create dialogue and sometimes arguments because it just gets messy, and that's the nature of humanity. And so I do wonder, do we avoid unnecessary strife and arguments? I also would say another warning would be narcissism, because you're constantly wanting to know people's response to what you've had to say. It goes way beyond reciprocity and someone responding and giving feedback to, did they like what I said? Did they like my picture? I mean, even on Facebook and Instagram, you like things. And so I think that can create an unnecessary narcissism or insecurity or desire to live for man and not for God.
I like to share stuff that's going on at the church. Like I love putting out the I love my church, I love our church, like somebody got saved, somebody got baptized. One recently was over the course of a few weeks, 3 different generations were baptized at one of our churches. And it's awesome to think, man, maybe this time last year, like this family wasn't Christian, and now this year, the 3 generations are praying together. Like that's amazing. So I love sharing that stuff, what Jesus is doing in people's lives. And I just love sharing stuff I do with the family, because so much of my life is books and podcasts and vodcasts that's really not where I don't spend most of my time on a stage yelling at people. Most of the time I'm home on the couch watching Monsters University. That's really where I spend more of my time. I go into the office 1 day a week, I preach 1 day a week. Other than that, I'm home 5 days a week, except for travel weeks, and I'm home for dinner 7 nights a week. So I'm family guy, pretty hardcore. So that's the stuff I like sharing too. Yeah.
Trap number 1, the trap of coveting. And so this is whenever we begin to covet somebody else's platform, their influence, their success, how many likes they get, how many shares they get, how many comments they get on their post. And if we are not careful, we can begin to seek to get our validation or some semblance of self-worth based on how people respond to our post on social media. The second major trap that I see so many people falling into is to use social media as a platform to vent their feelings. The Bible says that a fool vents all of their anger, whereas a wise person quietly holds them back. And so the next time you are tempted to use social media to put somebody on blast or vent your feelings, just press the box that says post only to me so that you are the only one that can see it. And so the third trap is what I'm calling the comparison trap. And so one of the things that is so easy to do is to start comparing your reality to somebody else's highlight reel. And so if we only look at what people post about their family, about their relationship, their marriage, their children, their career, we will get the impression that their situation is perfect, not realizing that people generally only post their highlights and they normally don't post their lowlights. And if you're not careful, the enemy will start to play tricks with your mind to cause you to think that your situation sucks just because you do not have what you think they have. The fourth trap is what I'm calling the time trap, because social media can contribute to an enormous waste of time. The latest statistics show that the average American spends over 3.5 hours a day on social media, as compared to probably about 3 or 4 minutes a day in our Bible. The Bible says that we should make the most of our time and that we should number our days. Trap number 5 is the trap of secrecy. Over 20% of all divorces are a result of a relationship that started online. Over 41% of all people who got caught cheating said that it was their actions on social media that led them to being caught. Social media is conducive to us having secret, illicit relationships with so-called friends or old acquaintances that our spouse knows nothing about. So I want to encourage you to make sure that your significant other is comfortable and aware of your interaction with the opposite sex on social media, and that we would go out of our way to monitor how deeply and how much we communicate with the opposite sex. Number 6 is what I'm calling the distraction trap. In other words, social media can distract us from building meaningful and engaging relationships through conversation. And so let's say you're out with your friends, and instead of engaging in conversation with them, you are busy Snapchatting with somebody across the world, or you're checking out the latest news feed, or you're following your favorite celebrity on Instagram, or you're checking out a photo on Pinterest. And if we're not careful, it can send the message that this person is not worthy or deserving of our undivided attention. And trap number 7 is what I'm calling the co-signing trap. And so this is the idea that everything that we like, share, or support is no longer just a reflection of you, but is a reflection of Christianity as a whole. So let's say we like something that clearly has a worldly message, is inconsistent with what the Bible teaches. What we are saying is that I am putting my stamp of approval on this, and I'm in full agreement with this, even though I did not write it, which has the potential to cause somebody to believe that Christianity as a whole is in agreement with this, because you and I are part of a bigger group of people.
I mean, here's who we really are in real life, and this is what we present on Facebook. Guilty a little bit of it. We have the selfie now, and if you think about a selfie, it's rather a sad invention. It's us taking a picture of ourselves by ourselves. Maybe we can get 2 more people if somebody really has a long arm. The bathroom selfie, I find this hilarious. I see it all the time. I'm like, oh, great, that's you in front of a mirror. Great, going to a party I probably was not invited to, that you're going to be selfieing your way through while I watch Home Alone on Facebook. We have the Oscar selfie. That was a lot of fun. That crashed the Twitter feed, I think most people know. And then we have the funeral selfie, not so fun. She looks very unpleased. And we have the driving selfie, because I mentioned research shows that won't kill you at all. I think we would all live life better if we had hands to hold rather than keys to click.
So you don't have to say a lot. If I can ask an indiscreet question, how many of you have tattoos? A few, but not most. What happens if Facebook, Google, Twitter, LinkedIn, cell phones, GPS, Foursquare, Yelp, Travel Advisor, all these things you deal with every day turn out to be electronic tattoos? And what if they provide as much information about who and what you are as any tattoo ever would? That's getting really good. So you can take a picture with an iPhone and get all the names. Although, again, sometimes it does make mistakes. But that means you can take a typical bar scene like this, take a picture, say, of this guy right here, get the name, and download all the records before you utter a word or speak to somebody, because everybody turns out to be absolutely plastered by electronic tattoos. And so there's companies like Face.com that now have about 18 billion faces online. Here's what happened to this company.
So mobile, the new cigarette, it has become a new type of distraction. And in certain areas also been called the new cigarette because we have it in our pockets. And every time we feel we're bored or frustrated or we feel some tension, we have a tendency to always wanting to pick it up because it gives us rewards and pleasure, which is called dopamine. The same kind of effect as it does with cigarettes.
There's a study by Mary Meeker that says we touch our phones or check our phones 150 times a day.
Well, so at the time, I was on the Gmail team, and I was interested in, first of all, that as you're designing the next version of Gmail, it became Inbox. A lot of people have Inbox now. How do you, for example, decide should you buzz people's pockets when they get a new email? So it's like a seemingly trivial decision, but whether you decide one way or the other, like dinner conversations and families will either be disrupted or not, and someone will glance and then see it and then get sucked in or not, all because of this one decision in California with a handful of people in a room. What this missed was that in the race for attention, every single app or media site or news site or podcast is competing for attention. And the best way to do that is to actually play these sort of magic tricks on people's minds and to manipulate them so you can get as much attention as possible. And that element is where the responsibility lies.
Yeah, it's interesting you said magic trick because you used to be into magic as a kid, right? So you sort of knew what some of these tricks are. So what are some of the tricks that are keeping us looking at these things all day?
The main one I say all the time is just that your phone is basically a slot machine because every single time you check it, you either got invited to do the Rubin report or you just get another newsletter. It could be the email that's really exciting. It could be the text message from that person you really wanted to text you. Or it could just be nothing. Literally, it's like a slot machine. Every single time you turn it over, you're playing. And then sometimes you get good stuff, sometimes you don't. I mean, I think this is really interesting because if you say there's like a Geneva Convention of persuasion, and saying, well, how low on the brainstem should we be allowed to go? So one thing that Snapchat does particularly, and I find this particularly concerning because the number one use case or demographic is teenagers who use Snapchat and kids. So there's a persuasive technique where if you put people into a reciprocity relationship where they kind of owe each other something. So if your friend says happy birthday to you, you have to say, oh, thank you so much, right? But if you were able to be like a puppet master above two people and tap this one on the shoulder and get them to say happy birthday to this person, and every single time they had to respond to happy birthday, they'd have to go back into Facebook, then you're sitting there causing all these people to do all these things and run around like chickens with their heads cut off. And it might be beneficial, but it also might be manipulative. So what Snapchat does is they invented a feature called Streaks that shows the number of days in a row that you've sent a message back and forth. And so if you're a kid, you have like 30 of these things going. And so like, for example, it'll say you have 150 days going with this friend. And what they just did is they invented something that now these two kids don't want to lose. And so it's not even that they're having real conversations with each other. They're going, just to make it through their day, they have to send a message of a photo or a wall or anything just to sort of tap the other friend in the shoulder, and then they have to send a message back. And kids, when they go on vacation, they give their password to 5 other friends to make sure they don't lose their streak. So all of this is getting sort of added to the scheduling little blocks of time in kids' minds and in their lives. And it's not done because it's helping them live their life. It's done because it's really good at getting you to stay and addicted to the app.
So
I asked everybody in here if they could take their phone, set it down, and walk away for an hour. Could you do it? An immediate sense of panic comes over us. We will turn the car around, even if we are halfway to our destination, just to go back and get our cell phones.
If you had another public issue of concern And let's say you were a business and you didn't want people to know about it. What would you do if there's some big public issue? Well, one strategy you can use, almost like a magician would think, is you can cast doubt about an issue. And you can say, well, the science isn't really clear, the jury's still out, it's controversial, we don't really know yet, right? This is a strategy, and in fact, this is the exact strategy that the tobacco company used, saying that doubt is our product, since it is the best means of competing with the body of fact that exists in the minds of the general public. So these things work, and they're not changing, and that's why I wanted to talk about it today.
A new study out by the Cohen's Children's Medical Center in New Hyde Park, their study says this year that texting while driving is now the #1 cause of death for teens, more than drinking and driving. So what this means is there's a lot of drunks on the road. I was speaking to some high school students, and of course, you know, they're always willing to make some sort of bargain, and they raised their hand and they said, well, what if you're at a stop sign? Or what if you're at a stoplight? And I said my message was, I don't think there's really anything that can't wait until we get to our destination. And don't forget, if you send that text at the stop sign, they're probably gonna text you back while you're driving. So maybe not the best idea. And I'll give you an example. If you're driving 55 miles an hour and you look down at your phone for 5 seconds, you've just now driven the length of an entire football field completely blind.
My son and I, you know, we spend a lot of times together, and he really loved playing table tennis. And I remember this one time he entered this huge tournament. And I was sitting at the bench cheering supposedly, but I was pretty much just staring down at my phone. And he did really good at this tournament. He actually came to the finals. And he was about to meet this very tough opponent. And they started playing, and the score was even. He had 2 points to win. And I felt the vibration in my pocket, and I had to take up my phone to see what was happening. And something new had happened on Facebook. And I really needed to check it out. And I hear the crowd is cheering. And I looked up from my phone to see what was happening. And it was as if everything was in slow motion. Everybody's surrounding my son to congratulate him because he had just won the whole tournament. But what I sadly see is that he's looking at me with these sad eyes, knowing that I missed watching him win the last ball that made him the champion of this tournament, just because I was too busy looking down at my phone all the time.
I see families like this out to dinner all the time, and it drives me nuts. And I see couples on dates, clearly together, but on their cell phones. It's one of the strangest things I've ever seen. But to me, what does this say when we are together? To me, it says that there's someone, anyone, on the other end of this screen that's way more important than you, who's right in front of my face.
No cumulative value in the random things that we opt for over the important things. There's no cumulative value in the random things that we opt for over the important things. Let me illustrate it this way. If in this hand you were to put 30 minutes a day, week after week after week, year after year of exercise, and if in this hand you were to put all the things that you chose to do instead of exercising, this would add up to nothing. In fact, what did you do last year instead of exercise? You have no idea. Because it's not cumulative. You can't point at anything. You say, well, I slept in. Well, what do you have for all that sleeping in? Nothing. You know, I did email. What do you have for nothing? You know, I worked a few extra hours. Let's put all that in a pile. What do you have for all the things that you did instead of the things that were important? Nothing.
And how many times have you guys heard, what do you mean you don't know? I posted it on Facebook. So for some reason now, we're all supposed to know about each other's lives because they posted it on Facebook. And I don't know that you climb Mount Kilimanjaro. You didn't tell me last week when we were at brunch. And what do we present really when we are on Facebook? We present an idyllic life, perfect parenting, great relationships. We hardly ever give any bad news or copy about ourselves because that doesn't make for a lot of likes. Different high school group I was speaking to, and they raised their hand and educated me on something I didn't know. They said, you know, we wait until 5 o'clock before we post our Instagram pictures because that's when we know all of our friends are out and we'll get the most traffic. I thought that was pretty interesting, and then they started talking a little bit more about how they get jealous. So if one person gets more likes on Instagram than the other, then they just take it down. So there's all this emotional turmoil and strife going on with our number of likes somehow equaling our self-esteem. We are all our own public relations firms, always trying to figure out how we can increase our numbers. Work sometimes demands that from us as well. Certainly, we do that a lot in our personal life.
If I simply spend my time the way culture would have me spend my time, if I simply spend my time the way my appetites want me to spend my time, if I simply pick up my feet and allow myself to be taken by the stream of culture and what's happening around me, I will not only not redeem my time, we've all learned this the hard way, we will waste our time.
Post about how great this coffee is, but I can't think of a funny way to say it.
This post is like a page long. How do I shorten this?
Just take out all the vowels. No. It'll still be like
Seriously.
a page.
Hey guys, you on Twitter? Follow me.
Sometimes I want to move to another country where I wouldn't have to deal with this stuff.
Isso faz parecer que eu tô me achando?
Hashtag photo of the day.
Hashtag I quit. Just kidding.
Hashtag multitasking.
Hashtag squirm worm.
Hashtag road trip dudes. Not while you're driving, man.
Hashtag YOLOI.
Is anybody even gonna read this?
Besties.
Coffee friends. Mini bagels.
Soon. Unsubscribe.
What's up, Facebook?
Oh, look at my new shoes. Unfollow.
I love coffee.
We're going viral. Driving selfie. Glaciers.
Desert.
Third world.
Nobody cares.
I'm gonna hide all of you.